Hey, everyone. It's time for that mysterious time of day, lunch with Mal. Oh, it's really mysterious, but I still got some Halloween vibes going on. I am sorry there was no lunch with Mel last week. Jill and I had to make a trip out of town for some immigration stuff. And thought about doing it on Friday, but I had some calls and it was Halloween, yada, yada, yada. So there was no lunch with Mel. I apologize. Um, but we're back. And actually, I got a really good suggestion for what to talk about today, and it was how to deal with burnout. Hey, honey, it's always nice to see you here, Buggy Boo. If you're unaware, Jill's my wife. It just occurred to me just all of a sudden that maybe someone doesn't know that. And you're like, now why are you talking to one of your viewers that way? Hey, Emily, Amy, how are you doing? Hey, Rebecca. Yeah, you're live. Yeah, for me, it's kind of nice because it's 11 o'clock in the morning, whereas previously this has been happening at 10 o'clock in the morning because Lunch with Mal is still on Eastern Standard Time, but we live in Saskatchewan now, and Saskatchewan doesn't do daylight savings time. So we didn't have a time change, which I like not having the time change, but it does make it a little bit more difficult to interface with everybody else. Um, I wish we would just switch to daylight savings. I realized someone mentioned that we're actually only on daylight savings for about 3 or 4 months out of the year. So it's kind of, or sorry, we're on standard time for only 3 or 4 months of the year. So why not just be on daylight savings all the time? Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Yes, Amy, I do need to dress up. Oh, hi, Mom, Monique as well. I've been sort of like not doing it because I've been doing so much renovations. I don't want to be wearing like a nice outfit for renovations, but I'm jonesing to like dress up in some fun outfits. So it's gonna happen. Yeah, it absolutely has to happen. On some random Thursday. Not this Thursday, because I have to go dig a trench in the backyard in 2 hours. So that's why it didn't happen today. But I feel like once winter really sets in and I can't do that much renovation work anymore, then I think we'll definitely be getting a little more costume and dress up time. Um, so yeah, so today we're going to talk about burnout a little bit. We'll talk about some other things too because I want to talk about some of the things I'm seeing in the ad world as well. But I think that for authors, burnout is like actually a really important topic to discuss. Uh, it's not an if thing; it's a when thing. Burnout will hit us all. Uh, Life just has a way of doing that, right? That's interesting. Monique has her PC scheduled for Eastern time. Oh, it's a good idea, actually, if you need to schedule things. If you want to market to Americans, doing things in the morning EST is a good time to have them go out. Um, so I'm guessing everybody here, yeah, trench digging is kind of lame. Everybody here has probably experienced burnout, maybe a big burnout, maybe a small burnout. I feel like I am one of the people who is like very highly qualified to talk about burnout because I went 5 years without publishing a book. Um, I think that's and it was due to burnout. Man, I remember when I was really starting to flag. It was in early 2021. I was desperately trying to keep writing, but I was like barely able to write like 200 or 300 words a day. Everything was a distraction that could pull me away from my writing. I couldn't focus. I couldn't concentrate. Um, I had 7 pre-orders up at the time, and I was like, "What about all these pre-orders? What about my readers? What am I going to do?" And I came to a point where I'm just like, "This isn't working." Doing the same thing over and over again, trying to expect things to change just isn't going to work. And so I canceled my pre-orders, and I was just like, "The books are going to have to come out when the books come out," and that was terrifying to do. Let me be perfectly clear. And I thought like, okay, it's the system that I'm using. Like through pandemic, what kept me going was doing public sprints with other authors. And like maybe like running the sprint is what's caused me to be burned out about writing. And if I just write by myself again, like I used to, that will work. And I tried that and it didn't work. And I tried different outlining methods and it didn't work. I tried all these different things about the system of how I was writing instead of like really like taking care of myself. Um, and I think some of it's probably like a getting older thing. And some of it's I think related to COVID and also some is related to just how many books I wrote. But one of the things I've definitely noticed as I get older is that I can't. The things that used to work don't work as far as getting through things, be it physical things or mental things. And in so many ways, when I was younger, I mean, young people have more stamina, right? And my solution for most problems was to just push through it. Just deal with it, suck it up, just keep going. And one of the things I've learned is as I get older, the answer is actually like you need to rest. Um, and and that's something that I had to learn the hard way. That the only way to really recover my writing mojo was to rest and to let it take some time off. I don't blame you, Monique. You have been through the editing gauntlet for like the last year. So yeah, I could totally see that as causing burnout. And that's like a really important note. Like the burnout you're experiencing could be is if it's affecting your writing, then obviously that's writing burnout of some sort. But it doesn't mean it came from writing. It could come from editing. It could come from a problem in your family. Um, it could come from like running out of ideas or running out of ways to describe things in a way that you find interesting. It doesn't have to be just like mental fatigue because the well is dry. It can be from so many different things that can all cause you to have burnout. And I think some of that was compounded. I think COVID caused a lot of authors to burn out, and in part because I think COVID for a lot of us made our ADHD worse. You know, the systems that a lot of us with ADHD had to cope with things. Like you talk to a person with ADHD and you're like, "Do you have a problem doing this?" And they're like, "No, no, like I can get stuff done, of course." And you're like, "Cool. Do you just sit down to do it, or do you have a system?" People with ADHD, which I think is most authors, we're all like, "Oh, I have a system. Let me tell you about my systems that I have for getting things done." Um, but for a lot of us with COVID, the systems broke down, and the systems are what kept us organized and protected us from the the results of our various neurodivergencies. And even if not even like thinking about things in a neurodivergent way, but just like life situations. Humans are by nature conflict averse and struggle averse, right? Like we try to find the path of least resistance to do things because I mean in a system in a world where energy is finite, right? Like you only have so much energy to do things. Finding the most efficient way to do everything is literally the only thing that makes sense. um, and so we all have systems to get everything done, whether we're neurodivergent or not. And a lot of those systems broke down for us. And I don't know that all of us have rebuilt all many of our systems, or some the systems have been taking a while to figure back out again. Um, I don't know that I fully figured out all the systems I need to have to function the way I used to anymore. But I say all of this because I think people maybe someone needs to hear it that even if you're not writing right now, even if the words won't come and it's been years since you published your last book, you're still an author. That doesn't go away. You have written books. Maybe you don't enjoy writing anymore and you feel guilty about that. Um, and one of the things that Jill has said in the past is she enjoys having written. She doesn't always enjoy writing, and she came to terms with that as that being okay to feel that way. And interestingly, since then, I think there's been periods where Jill has enjoyed writing again, but she had to sort of accept that's not always the case. And so I think one of the first things I really want to say to everybody is you don't have to feel guilty about whether or not you've written anything recently or how productive you are. You don't have to feel like you're not an author. You deserve to feel like an author if you've written, um, and no one can take that away from you, not even your own various dysfunctions that you might have. So I want to put that out there. When he said ADHD and OCD here, I have a system for writing, but editing it's like pulling fingernails. I just want to give an editor a draft. It's a hot mess, or don't want to give an editor a draft that's a hot mess. Yeah, I had one editor for about 80 of my books, maybe 85. And we got to a point where I could actually give her a rough draft and she could just roll with it. I also got a lot better writing my rough drafts, but yeah, I hate editing a lot. Editing for me is no fun, tedious, and takes so much longer than the original initial writing. Um, so for me, actually, from a time perspective, it's actually really good to even if the editor has to work extra hard and I have to pay them a bit more, it's actually worth it to have the editor do that because it's just not super productive for me to do that part. But I'm curious if anybody here right now, like, has anyone here been had burnout before? Are you in burnout right now? Do you fear ending up in burnout soon? Um, I guess other things too is like the state of the world. I think can be a totally valid reason to experience burnout. Chuck says, I've struggled so much lately. I even bought a bunch of covers to try and force myself to get over the hump. So many tears. I'm sorry, Chuck. But I really want to keep going. I have so many ideas still. I think some of the lack of success and also the messy state of the world makes it feel like, why am I even doing what people read this when their lives are falling apart? I think people will read just as much, if not more, when their lives are falling apart. There are tons of authors that are still out there selling a lot of books. Uh, I do think it's easier. It's always the more niche genres that suffer first. So I think you write a little more niche, Chuck, and that always makes it a little more difficult. But it doesn't mean there aren't people who need your stories and love your stories and can experience profound joy, change, and comfort from your story. So don't forget that after doing all of this. But also, there's not a non-messy way to get through really bad burnout that doesn't involve tears and or sadness and struggle and frustration and so much frustration. But it's not your fault. I think is a good way to think of it. If you're trying to write, it's it's not your fault, and sometimes it just takes time. You know, it may just be that you're not at a point right now in your life where you can just push through it, or maybe you just need to say like, I'm going to take 6 months and not push myself to write, let myself recover. I had to do that. That was in the end for me. That was the solution. I had to take a year of just not thinking about writing, about not trying to write, about not guilting myself over writing. And I did have to disconnect a bit from my fan base and stuff like that, so I wouldn't feel bad whenever they would ask me for if books were coming and stuff like that. But in the end, that's what it took. It took like a hiatus for me to be able to recover enough. Um, and I also like was being aware of the fact that I needed to refill the creative well. So I was exposing myself to other stories that were in my genre and how they were telling them, and rewatching things that I used to watch back when I was like really in the zone to try and see if I could like refill the well with other creative materials that would help me get back there. And it totally did. And my readers loved the book that I put together. I was so afraid too that when I got back after being away for 5 years, it'd be like, well, this wasn't worth the wait. Um, but everybody said it was worth the wait. So, um, the self doubt can be crippling. It's always there, ready to take us down. But if you have written in the past, you can absolutely write again. You may not feel it right now. You might hate the idea of writing, but you can do it again in the future. It can come back. I totally promise you. Um, Amy says, I've had it before, not currently worried. What worked for me was best was remembering that people need our escapism and that we need to escape in it too. I like that, especially that last part. We do need to escape into our own escapism. Um, and just like be in the story. Like, don't worry about if it's going to sell. Don't worry about how you're going to market it. Don't worry about like what everybody else thinks you're supposed to do as far as telling the story. Just tell the story that you need that you need for you. I think that's the best way to write a good story. Um, it says self care by limiting negative news, people, social media, reveling in hobbies. For me, it's plants, walking, loving my dogs, doing fun stuff with friends. I mean, yeah, we, there's obviously there's the whole philosophy of manifestation, and while I don't fully subscribe to manifestation in all of its forms, I do really believe quite strongly that we move in the direction we're facing. So if you face yourself towards negative things that make you feel bad, that's the direction you move in. You can't move in a different direction. I mean, yes, you could back up, but it's harder. It's much easier to move in the direction that you're facing. So like Amy talking about like walking, plants, loving on your dogs, it's fun stuff with friends. That's going to help you move in the direction you need to move in to do your stories. I love plants, by the way. Um, the thing I love the most about plants is that they remind us that it's all about the journey. Like a lot of times for like say you're growing plants for food, you want to get I don't know, some corn or some peas or some tomatoes or something like that. You get the first stage of the plant, right? Oh, there's a sizable spider on the roof up there. Um, where it's not that big, just big for here. Where like you get a seed and you stick a seed in dirt and you add water and life erupts from that. And that's like a for me, that's a source of joy. It's a dopamine hit. And then you have to nurture this plant and possibly transplant it. And then you have it grow and you keep it healthy. And then it begins to flower and produce fruit. And every part of the journey is the reward. So much so that at the end of the day, whether or not I actually get to feed my family off of this plant is almost immaterial because I've already gotten like so much joy from the journey. So much of what we do these days, the dopamine hit is only at the end. And far too often in the writing of our own books, we place the dopamine hit at the end, not at the journey. And I oftentimes think about my books as growing plants while I'm writing them, to think about the different phases that I'm taking the story through, just like I do with plants, to remind myself that the journey is the reward. The end is just icing on the cake, but the journey is absolutely the reward. Um, Chuck says, "You're very welcome, Chuck. I think you're a fantastic person, and I'm happy to be a help to you in any way. Um, yeah, you're not alone. Trust me. And like I said, I tried everything those 5 years, every possible thing I could do to get things working again. And in the end, like it was just time. I did focus though as much as possible on still doing creative endeavors though, because I feel like at the end of the day, whether I'm writing books or anything else, like I'm a maker. I make things. I do creative things, um, and, and I'm also a storyteller as well. So it doesn't have to be like words banged into the keyboard to tell a story. Um, one of the things I've noted that I did do periodically during those 5 years is I did do some short stories. Um, and I'm not saying you need to do short stories, anybody else, but for me it was like a reminder, like, hey, I can still tell a story, and it was like a super low bar, like 3K, 5K. But that kind of helped me feel like, okay, I can still do this. I still can write about characters. I can still tell stories that people are interested in. That was really really good for me. Hi, Beth. How are you doing? We are definitely enjoying Canada, except for the fact that it is currently like I don't know, cold. It's very cold. It's like it's windy. I'm not looking forward to going outside later, but it's got to happen. Um, yeah. Anybody else had struggles with burnout or currently are struggling with burnout? Um, I'm always curious to hear your stories and how you're doing. Now, what do you think about scheduled time off? For example, have you met authors um, who take February off to recharge? I don't know about February for sure. I do know about definitely about scheduled time off for sure. Like I know one author, and she takes 30 days off after every book comes out, or sorry, after she's done writing every book. So while the editor has it and all that sort of thing, she takes 30 days where she doesn't write at all. Um, and she said if she breaks that rule and tries to write before then, she just messes herself up, and she has to take that 30 days off to recharge every time she's done writing a book. Um, I I think I tried I mean, I guess I tried ultimately I tried scheduled time off of you'll write again when you're ready. It's kind of what it ended up being. But I actually think that's a really good thing to do. In if for no other reason than just to reduce expectations on yourself for a time, and give yourself some time to recharge and then, do some other fun, creative, well filling things to fill that creative well. Um, I don't know if that worked for everybody, but I think it's worth trying for someone if you wanted to try it. But I do think burning the candle at both ends all the time is definitely not the solution. That's how you get to burnout, and it's certainly not how you're going to get out of burnout. Like I said, like especially as we get older, just pushing through it isn't the thing that works anymore. The older you get, the less just push through it you have. Am I talking about Sarah? Oh, you're asking Amy if she's talking about Sarah. Is that a thing that Sarah Cannon recommends doing? I think I remember talking to her about that. I think she has definitely has the kind of life and Like, in that she's a very busy person, has a lot going on, where I could totally see that being a thing that would work for her and that she would absolutely do. Um, Also, so here's a crazy thing to put out there. You don't have to read books to feel like you're an author. A lot of authors talk about like what are you reading, and they say you have to read all the time to keep yourself going. I don't think you have to read books as an author to refill the well. Reading books might be the wrong thing. So if you're feeling guilty about like not writing, and everybody's saying, well, you need to read books, and you're reading books, and you're not feeling that either, and then that just sort of lumps on the guilt. Don't feel like you have to read books. I don't read a lot of books. I have read a lot of books. I've read over 10,000 books, but these days in my life, I don't read that many books. I consume stories in other ways, and that's what's working for me right now. Um, and in the future, I might read books again, and I'm totally okay with that. Oh, Sarah Hopkins. Okay, I have not chatted with Sarah in forever. I need to find her on the interwebs again and just say hi. Um, February might be a great time for that because February, I tell you, February is a dumb month, right? Like we all know that our sales are going to be lower in February because it's 2 to 3 days shorter than other months, So especially after having 2 31-day months in a row, dropping down to 28 days, you definitely feel it. But even accounting for those 3 days, like I've done the numbers before, February still sucks. Like it just sucks. Which is, by the way, why I always say to people, do all sorts of marketing activities, paid or otherwise, in December, so that you can have a good December and a good January, because February is gonna suck. Um, it's just there's just no way around it. It's just, I mean, there are people who have a good February. Maybe they have a release that comes out, or they're riding a wave or something like that. But generally speaking, February does suck. Um, and that might be like a good month at the very least, just sort of mentally prepare yourself for the fact that, like, hey, it's not going to be a great month, and that's okay. I'm gonna chill. I'm gonna like make myself a lot of yummy teas and wear cozy things and sit in front of the fire. Knows what? Uh, that's totally valid. Or like take the summer off and enjoy summer. Like don't stress yourself out during summer. That's one of the things I think that we do as authors a lot, and especially as women, right? Like we're really good at guilting ourselves for things that we should be doing, that we think that are expected of us and that we're being judged for if we don't perform certain ways. And all that does is slow you down. That's all just dead weight. Um, you decide what works for you and what you need to do, not other people. I've talked about this in the past. Um, I don't even like acknowledge the concept of shame. Well, I acknowledge the concept of shame in it. They say I don't believe in. Like I don't. For me, shame only comes from other people. And guilt, I differentiate guilt as something like me feeling bad for a thing I actually did that was bad. But I don't have shame in my life. And so if I'm supposed to do something like, oh, you're a writer and you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that. Like I've got some books that I put out in 2019. I've just never gotten around to making paperbacks for. And I feel zero guilt or shame about that. It's just like, eh, I just haven't done it. Probably do it someday. Not going to lose any sleep over it. Like that sort of thing, right? Well, I'm glad, Dep. Don't give it yet. There's definitely a time to not give it a darn, give a darn anymore. That's definitely where you are. I'm 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 older than half your age, so I'm not like not that not well. I'm still pretty young, but I'm almost all out of darns to give about most things too. Um, my dad just turned 72, so I don't know how that's relevant at all. It just came to mind thinking about you being 81. But no, I'm not going to Vegas. I will not be returning to the United States for some time. Probably around 3 years, but who knows? Probably closer to 4 years, I bet, before I go back to the States. I don't have a desire to go back. Plus, it's complicated for me as a green card holder with a different name on my green card than my legal name. Getting back into the States right now would be ridiculously complicated. So yeah, it's just completely off the table for me. Yeah, exactly. Monique says, same here. I used to keep up with my paperbacks. Now it's, yeah, like some people make bank off their paperbacks. They really do. For me, it's always been kind of like, oh, look, I sold some paperbacks. Isn't that nice? So it's never been a thing I wanted to stress about too much. And I fell behind on them, and I'm going to survive. It's not going to be the end of the world at all. Although I have some readers right now who only read in paperback. So it's interesting, like keeping up with my paperbacks because I should, and because like unknown people might buy them, it just didn't work for me. But knowing that there's this guy named Jay who loves my books but only reads in paper and is just so like enthusiastically, joyfully eager to read my books, I'm taking care of these paperbacks now. You know, and that's, I think, free garbage bag. What does that mean, Beth? I think I missed some sort of context for that. Um, that's shoot. Where was I going with this? Oh, so I think that's something that I've sort of come to accept in my life is that every part of my life has seasons. Um, and I might go through a season where I really love a particular hobby, or I start a business doing a particular thing. I used to like make furniture, like nice console tables and kitchen tables and office desks and stuff like that out of reclaimed wood. So I go around, find wood that people are throwing away, or find like wood from like old projects that's sitting in a field or something like that. And I built furniture out of them. I had a whole business. I had tons of equipment and everything for doing it. And eventually I just didn't enjoy it anymore. And I just stopped doing it. Big reason why I didn't enjoy it is I hated shipping tables because I'd build these crates that were like as much work as building the table to put the table into. It was miserable. Um, but and I used to feel guilty that I wasn't doing that woodworking anymore. But I came to accept that my life has seasons, and sometimes things come back into season, and sometimes they don't. Both of those things are totally okay. You know, um, plastic. Thought you said bang. Oh, okay. What's that? Chuck says writers of erotica are seeing a huge uptake in paperback sales due to Amazon and other ebook platforms pulling content even when you've purchased it. Is that happening? Is Amazon pulling book content after people have purchased them? That's pretty crazy. I didn't realize they were doing that. That's that's bullshit. I can see other platforms doing that. I mean, and we see it with movies on Amazon. And it's a big thing in video games. There's actually a movement right now called "Stop Killing Video Games" because you'll buy a video game, and then 10 years later, or sometimes a lot sooner, the publisher of the video game decides they don't want to support the server infrastructure for it anymore, and they just shut it down. And then the video game you paid money for just can't be played anymore. It was actually debated yesterday in the UK Parliament. Not yesterday, day before yesterday, I think, in the UK Parliament, and they nothing happened, but it's at least a start in dealing with that particular problem. At my age, Beth says, at my age, erotica is tiring. Ah, just having to think about all the activity involved. Hey, Mark, how are you doing? Yeah, they say it's more of a license when you buy an ebook. It is. It is really just a license. Yeah. I mean, that's any content that you don't have physically is kind of just a license. It can be taken away at any point. So, I do like the idea, or at the very least, like getting a non DRM EPUB. So getting an EPUB from the author doesn't have any copyright protection built into the file, and then just storing that yourself is a way around that as well. Um, that's one of the reasons why for my books I never enable DRM, so my readers can actually always, if they have a little bit of savvy, extract the book from their Kindle and store it locally if they want to. They can absolutely do that because I think that when they pay money for my book, they should have a copy of it they can read forever. Um, Technically, Amazon doesn't agree with that, but I'm not gonna do anything to stop readers from doing it. So, has anybody else here dealt with burnout? I'm curious if people have steps they've used to get past burnout, things that have helped them get past burnout. Like I said, for me, it was really accepting that I just needed to take some time and not try to force it. That was the thing that ended up working after I tried a lot of other things. But that was the thing that worked for me. There is if there was one solution to all of our problems, we would have a much different world that we live in. Many of us, there are different solutions because we're all different people. Um, so I'm curious anybody else has anything that they've had to use to get past burnout. But if anybody doesn't have anything that I haven't mentioned or they don't think is that they don't want to share. But I think that the biggest thing to remember is that you're always you're an author. Once an author, forever an author. It doesn't go away. And it's okay if the seasons of your life change such that you don't write books anymore. That does not mean you're a failure. Every single one of us will eventually stop doing every single thing that we do in one form or another. Ultimately, we'll stop doing everything. And that doesn't mean we failed, right? Like it's okay for the things that we do to change, the things that we find joy in to change, things that work for us to earn money change. None of it means we're a failure. It just means that life changes. And that's okay. That happens. I certainly don't want anyone to stop writing because I think that for most of us who are writers, there's a lot of joy in it. Um, and we love telling stories. But at the same time, I do encounter people, they're just like, I don't have any more stories. I think I'm done being a writer. And I'm like, that's okay. It's totally okay for you to be in that situation. We could put Bep in charge of the world. I do think, Bep, that of anybody I've ever met who wants to actually run the world, you could possibly be the most qualified, just based on the things our interactions over the years. So I support Bep for God Emperor of Earth. Just putting that out there now. You've got my vote, Bep. Mark says I found that retreating to research often inspires me. I actually agree with that. That's research is actually where my ideas originally came from for writing science fiction, um, and even writing fantasy. When I was younger and wrote fantasy, it was looking at maps and researching and understanding how trade routes form, how civilizations form around trade routes, um, how resources move, how raw goods and finished goods move. Um, that sort of thing actually inspired me to start writing books. And to a lot of people, that sounds insane, but almost all of civilization is built on that, on who digs the stuff out of the dirt, who makes the stuff, who grows the food, who prepares the food, and back in early civilization, one person did everything. But to grow our civilization, people had to start to specialize. And in this specialization and this moving of goods comes conflict. It comes societal differences. That's where comes culture and all that sort of thing. And that's where the stories are. So that's actually where my stories always come from, is thinking about, who would have access to what, who would want the thing that they have, how could they trade and get that, and the stories come out of that, whether it's war or peace, cooperation or strife. It all comes out of that sort of thing for me. So I love doing the research, and then learning wild new things. Like here's a crazy sci-fi thing for you. The source of most of the resources in our star system is the sun. Um, Roughly all of the elements in the solar system, the sun has them in the same proportions. So you want uranium. Well, the sun contains 3 Earth masses of uranium. So if you took all the uranium out of the sun and made balls out of it, you could make 3 Earth-sized balls out of all the uranium that's in the sun. Um, the sun just has all the stuff. If you want to make things, it's got all the stuff. It's got iron, it's got everything all inside the sun, in roughly the same proportions that you would find them on Earth. Um, and so really advanced civilizations will do what's called star lifting, where they'll actually build platforms very close to the star, and they will actually extract resources off of the star using a variety of techniques that we're sort of just like guessing about at this point. Or just by catching a lot of it, because actually lava just streams out from the sun. The sun is constantly just blasting material into space. And then it's kind of like, wow, so if you like early civilizations might center around Jupiter, because Jupiter is where a lot of the flotsam and jetsam in the solar system collects. But eventually, once you start to exhaust all of that, the civilizations closer to the sun, which are almost deserts in a way when it comes to resources, if they can make it long enough, suddenly they have access to the star itself when technology advances far enough. And now they're controlling, the outer solar system's access to resources when you just go the way around, and then boom, stories come from that. So yeah, research for me absolutely brings about stories. I absolutely love it. It's so awesome. All right, scrolling back to look at comments here. Uh, Oni says, "Yeah, I'm about to retire in 4 years. Um, not write 10 books a year. I go 40 more books outlined to write in 6 series. Wow. So you're just like, you got a plan. You always have a plan, Monique. I'm really impressed by that. I like that you've got structure and a plan and you're executing. Um, Linda says, I'm not burned out on writing. It's the advertising that's killing me. I've given up. And as a result, I've earned 14 cents this month. That is rough, Linda. That's definitely a hard place to be in. And I feel bad because um, not all authors are built to advertise. You know, it's a analytical mindset um, that is doesn't work with everybody. And I don't have a solution for that because advertising is hard and it's expensive to hire someone else to do it. So it's not always an option to do that either. So that is rough. I think I think there's paid advertising and there's free advertising and there's a bunch of things in between. And sometimes it's a matter of finding the thing that you like doing. But also sometimes it's like, you know what? Just write books if you're in the zone for that and build up the backlist um, and give yourself a break from the advertising and then maybe focus on the advertising later when you're not feeling the writing. Um, I personally have done that. Everybody's like, "Oh, Mel's the Facebook ads person. She's always running Facebook ads." There's times I'm not running Facebook ads because I just don't want to. I mean, I'm always running them for other people, so there is that. But like, sometimes I just don't want to do it myself. I just want to take a break from it. I totally get that. Mark says trade routes are how information flows. That is totally true. That's a really great way to summarize that. Um, I do feel like, unfortunately, whether it's paid or free, there you have to do some sort of outreach about your books. That is a tricky thing. Um, but there are, you know, some of the ways you can do things are like, and this depends on so many different factors in your own personal life, what's possible for you. But you know, a free reader magnet that you run a $5 a day ad to, it's going to run you 150 bucks a month. Will slowly build your mailing list, and over time can sort of give you like a catalyst. What's the word I'm looking for? A gestalt that can build your writing up, and that can be a thing that you could do instead. You can sort of have a set it and forget it $5 a day ad that just feeds into a reader magnet. A good reader magnet at $5 a day can get you like 15 people a day on your mailing list. Um, and then over time that builds. And once you get a mailing list over 10,000 people that still has about a 30% open rate, that can be a pretty powerful thing. So maybe it's something like that that you have to do, and not focus so much on nitty gritty advertising new books, all that sort of thing. Just focus on building a mailing list and then connection and community with your readers, and then the sales will come. I think, unfortunately, unless a lot of money's involved these days, you can't become the next big thing. But I also never okay. Every now and then I want it to be the next big thing, and then I look at how much work is actually involved to be the next big thing, and I'm like, you know what? I'm perfectly happy just to be a me-sized thing and not the next big thing. I'm sorry, Linda. That is hard. I mean, 1,500 people isn't isn't a huge mailing list as well. Um, and the main thing about the mailing list is oftentimes those are people that are going to buy your next books, not your new books, because oh, there's a sorry, you're not your existing books. You're going to buy your next books because there's like sort of a panache to newness that can get people to buy stuff. But I really think for me, like the thing that kept me going over the 5 years when I didn't publish and made it so the books that I just published did reasonably well. It's not didn't do amazing. Let me be clear. The book that people waited 5 years for did not do amazing by my previous standards. I used to do $8,000 in a week or two after publishing a book, and this book has maybe done $5,000 in a month. It is like 40 some odd books deep because it follows a character. It's the tail end of a character's story that you actually have to read 4 series to get to. Um, so it's like at if you started halfway through, at best it's 15, 16 books in. Um, so it was never going to do amazing, but it didn't do as well as it would if I had waited. But you know, I'm okay with that. But it was my mailing list. You know, having a mailing list of over 10,000 people that made it so when I got that book that it worked, and that was a slow, methodical thing. Like I think that I've been working on building up my mailing list now for 14 years. Um, I've I once or twice pruned it overly aggressively. I've probably actually had over the course of my career like 35,000 people on my mailing list. And right now it's like maybe like 13 or something like that. I kind of wish I hadn't done one of the prunings that I did. Um, in retrospect, I don't I should have known better, and I do know better. Like, don't prune your mailing list ever, unless you absolutely have to because you're facing a super steep increase in your price of the service you're using. But if you do prune your mailing list, save all those addresses and periodically put them into some sort of free service and email them to let them know you're alive. Um, because they don't have to open every email to be valuable. Anyway, it's, I think that kind of goes back to, I think, the thing that gives me the most joy to my writing still is my connection with readers, and that's things like my mailing list are key for that. It's not like you don't get like great responses from people, but it is like the best way we have to have a direct avenue to talk with our people. That's the problem lies with the readers. They buy books and just aren't enough hours in there to read the books they already have. That is true as well. Um, and this is like the golden age of reading, and it still feels like a dark age a lot of the time. Like there's more books than ever. There's more people reading books than ever, and there's still a shockingly large amount of people who don't read books and have no interest in reading books. So it's complex. But I should wrap it up because our food has arrived. But I do want to remind you guys, like, hey, like for me, I started writing books because I wanted to tell stories, and I wanted to get to the words the end and have told a story that I was proud of. And making money at it sort of was like a wild and crazy thing that happened along the way. And I've gone from periods of making 50 grand a month to making 3 grand a month and back again. Um, and and it can be really demoralizing when when the amount of money goes down. And it's taken quite a while to sort of find my own path to recognizing that for me, I'm an author. I'll always be an author. I have burned out in the past. I will burn out again, you know. Um, that doesn't diminish what I've accomplished. And whether or not the market changes and I can't find readers anymore or anything like that, it doesn't diminish what I've accomplished. And that is that I managed to write stories. I wrote books. I told stories, and some number of people liked them. So that's one of the things I think I have that keeps me going, and it um, reminds me that like the joy that I have, those moments I had where I was just like really feeling a story, it was flowing and I was loving it. Like those are the moments that matter. It's like growing the plants. It's the journey that is the reward. Um, so you guys are very welcome. It was nice to chat with you about this. It's not my usual fare, right? But it's someone mentioned to me that I'm pretty qualified to talk about burnout, and thought it'd be a good topic. And I feel pretty strongly about the things I've said about how we're all writers, we're all authors. We always will be writers and authors if you have written and have published, and that's that journey of getting there. To me, is the biggest reward, and I hope it is for you. And that everything else is sort of icing on the cake. Um, and it doesn't diminish what you've accomplished, no matter how, like the chances are the best book in the world has been read by 3 people. You know, um, sales, the amount of sales, the amount of money that you make isn't the best measure of how good your book is. And and I know that if you're looking to make money off of it, that's cold comfort. But I really do believe in reframing how we think about our books and our writing to be about that and not about the money at the end of the day. Is as nice as the money is, you know, our joy it comes from the things that we've made, not from the money that we've made. So yeah, absolutely. That was a very good long with Mel, Amy. That was just funny, along with Mel. You guys are welcome. It's very nice having you here with me today. Um, I will see you next week. I will be here next week, and I have ad related things to talk about next week. There's still plenty of time before the holidays to dive into that. So it's okay, Amy. It was funny. All right. We'll see you guys. Have a fabulous day. I hope you have an excellent weekend. And I'll see you around. Ciao.